Hi guys, just a quick reminder before we get stuck into Sunday Vibes to go over to FDPL and subscribe. Check out our brand new show as well called The Game That Made. 2 episodes of it are live now. We'd appreciate your feedback. On to the show. Hello Team FD and welcome back to... How do we intro this? What is it? The show where we...
Will we answer your questions or something?
Welcome back to Sunday Vibes.
Hello Team FD and welcome back to Sunday Vibes where we answer all your bloody burning questions. We're in the pub. It's me, it's Doogie, it's Pat. Joe's not here today. He's off shooting something very special with the Saturday Social. If you miss it, go and check it out on Sky Sports' YouTube page. Anyway, let's get into it, lads. Question from B. Gisham kicking us off. Who are the hottest prospects in the Premier League based on the season so far? And I want to lay down some criteria for you because I believe he followed it up with some. So it's players who are under the age of 22, so we can't talk about Rashford, Tammy, Gabby Jesus or Daniel James. I think we've covered them enough anyway.
Why would we talk about Daniel James?
We also, it's a fair point, we also talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold quite a lot, don't we? So despite qualifying for this, let's skip him out.
He's not a prospect, is he? He's a Champions League winning.
Yeah.
One of the best in the world.
Right back.
He's a certified baller. So let's start with Gabrielle Martinelli, who was an unknown entity before this season, but looks like a bloody, hot prospect.
Yeah, well, he did have a loan at United a couple of seasons ago, but they couldn't get a deal over the line for him. And Arsenal picked him up from a side called Ituano, who are in the 4th division.
Serie D in Brazil is obscure.
Yeah, he had 10 goals in 34 games, and I looked at that and I was like, okay, well, I mean, it is the 4th division. On the other hand, he's 17, so you don't really know what that will look like. But he cost us 6 mil, and he's already certainly good enough for the bench. And I think he'll probably get a run out in Aubameyang's slot while Aubameyang's out with this red card suspension following the Palace game. He's been sensational so far. I mean, particularly obviously in the Cup and in the Europa League. But I'd say that the teams you play in the EFL Cup and the teams you play in the Europa League are probably not that dissimilar to like bottom of the Premier League sides. Certainly not this season, where the bottom of the Premier League has some really bad defensive sides. And he just kept scoring. I think he got a brace on his first 2 appearances for us. He ended up with 7 in his first 7. And he's also scored in the Premier League now. And if you look at his numbers in the Europa League, they're elite. I mean, it's over 3 shots a game, 1.8 key passes, 1.6 dribbles. Those are really, really good all round. In fact, those numbers look really similar to the way Callum Hudson-Odoi looked in the Europa League before he got that really bad injury. And he looks like he's kicking on and becoming like a really reliable Premier League contributor. So I think those are quite promising.
What excites you most about his game when you've seen him not in the flesh, on the TV? What have you thought?
Probably the intensity. He works incredibly hard for the side. He can dribble, he's incredibly fast, but it's whatever he does, he's doing it at maximum effort. So he tracks back in defence. I mean, after the City game, Kevin De Bruyne was saying, we know that their front 4 are not going to work back defensively except Martinelli. And everyone focused on the fact that obviously he's saying the front 4 weren't working defensively. But I was kind of like, it's interesting that they were like, well, Martinelli will work back, so we'll probably find our space on the other side. And yeah, I think that actually, while Aubameyang's out, he's obviously not the player Aubameyang is, but he's probably a more natural fit for that role, shuttling from the left into the middle. And yeah, he's already scored a goal for us against West Ham away, which was really nice. He just looks like he has a bit of everything. Physically, he looks like he's up to the Premier League. And so if you're up to the Premier League physically at 18, obviously I'm not saying that he's in the same category, but what's always remarkable about a player like, say, Wayne Rooney, when Wayne Rooney broke through, is Wayne Rooney physically looked like a match for Premier League defenders at 18 years old. If you have that, then injuries, barring injuries, you've got a really good chance of developing into quite a special player.
Yeah, he's lean, isn't it? I've liked his inventiveness, his creativity and his finishing as well. He definitely has that South American flair, doesn't he? Doogie,
hello.
Talking of flair and finishing, our next candidate, Mr. Greenwood of Manchester United. What do you have to say about him?
Well, his has been sort of not quite as meteoric as Martinelli, because he did obviously emerge last year, and United fans have been aware of his presence for quite a while. I think he scored 17 in 21 in 17-18 for the reserve side. Obviously made his debut in that Champions League win over PSG in that 3-1 win very late on, but became United's youngest ever Champions League player at that stage, second youngest in the European Cup behind Norman Whiteside. And the decision to sell Lukaku in the summer and not bring in a replacement was quite a indictment to how highly they rate Greenwood at United. And I think he's done exceptionally well. I think he's on 9 goals in 31. He's obviously ripped it up in the Europa League. He's got 4 goals and 1 assist in 5 games there. Looks like one of the competition's sort of, one of the top strikers in that competition in the group stages, albeit. And United have really needed him at massive points this year because of a chronic lack of goals from midfield. I think McTominay and Pereira each have 3 goal contributions. Matta's also on 3 now after last night. And then Pogba's on 2, Fred, Lingard, Matic without 1 at all. So that sort of impact that Greenwood's had, not often as a starter this year, but 31 appearances, I don't think anyone would have expected that last year at his age, still only 18. So he's really taken to life in the Premier League and at Old Trafford like a duck to water, really. And there's been quite a few young players that have impressed for United. Maybe not in the same way that we maybe expected. And some of the well-known names like Tahith Chong and Angel Gomez haven't really got going so far this year, albeit they've suffered with injuries, and it looks like Chong's actually leaving this month. But Brandon,
right, been linked with Juventus and
both
Barcelona,
of them, yeah, both of them. Yeah. Which is, it feels again like that situation that United were in with Pogba a few years ago, when if clubs of that calibre are going in for your youngsters, you've really got to push to keep them or try and get them more involved. But United are already suffering from sort of a lack of experience in certain areas, a lack of quality in midfield. It's probably not the time to put them in. But I feel Brandon Williams has really come into his own in the last 6-7 weeks or so. Looked awesome in a game in the Premier League. I think it was against Burnley over Christmas. Played exceptionally well last night in the FA Cup as well. Looks like he's now clearly gone above Luke Shaw, who I was suggesting on Twitter last night that United should probably look to sell. Obviously, they spent a hell of a lot on him for a left back in, I think it was 2016. I think it was about 32 million. And they're not going to get anywhere close to getting that money back. But if they could get him off the books for close to 15, use Brandon Williams as a first choice or a second choice, and then bring in a sort of lights out left back in the summer, then I think that would serve United very well going forward.
Who did you suggest on Twitter?
So I suggested Luca Digne. I think he is Man United quality. I don't know whether he's someone that's going to take them into sort of a Champions League level, which is what they're aspiring to. But for now, he's definitely a step up on Luke Shaw. I also suggested Grimaldo, Goossens at Atalanta, and Vendel at Bayer Leverkusen, all who are the right price bracket. They wouldn't break the bank. They'd be about 30, 35 max, I would have thought, and all the right age range. I think the oldest of those is about 26. Insee comes in, makes United better in that area, and then they need to focus massively on their creativity in midfield and possibly another forward and definitely a right winger in the summer. So there's a lot to do for United. So maybe they think left back's not our priority, but it could well be. But Greenwood has been one of the few positives of an otherwise pretty disappointing campaign again.
Yeah, we discussed United a lot last week, didn't we? So we'll keep this brief. But do you agree with those left back targets? Who would you look to bring in if you were United for that position, or would you, back Brandon Williams to eat up all those minutes?
I probably would get somebody else in and get rid of Shaw if I could, just because he's not reliably fit. And you do need to have 2 players for that position. And Man United are not a side who are kind of held back by financial considerations. I don't think Dean is at the right level. He gets big creative numbers because a lot of stuff goes through him, but they are
set pieces.
They are fundamentally just crosses, and his defensive numbers have never really been very good, except in the air. He's good in the air. So I think you can do better than that. Grimaldo I really like, but it's always hard to gauge coming out of Belgium and Portugal, and I'd also worry about Goossens just because I never really know what people are coming out of Atalanta. So I think those guys are all worth looking at, except maybe Digne, because I'm not a fan. But I don't know, there must be somebody around, but it's a hard position to recruit for right now, left back.
The Grimaldo thing has become a little bit similar to the William Carvalho situation, in that he's linked with a big club every transfer window and no one opts to sign him. It never really materialises into anything other than paper chatter, which has me worried about Grimaldo, because his numbers are good, like you said. I had a good education at La Masia, didn't he? But yeah, no concrete interest. Maybe I'd opt for Digne as well. But alas, I'm moving on to Reece James. So you guys have spoken about the Europa League as a good proving ground, but we've seen for top sides in particular this season that the Championship last year was a great testing ground for some of their top prospects, and we We discussed this with Tor Andrew Flo on the Football Social because he looks after Chelsea's loanees. That's his role. That's his role at the club. And he was saying we expected Mason Mount to make an impression because of how well he did in the Eredivisie. You know, we expected some other youngsters to really come through. Hudson-Odoi to make an impression in the first team, you know, following that contract extension. You know, sort of Tammy Abraham to lead the line. I think there was a lot of confidence behind the scenes, despite the fact he's kind of exceeded expectations. But he was saying, Reece James, not a lot of people were expecting him to come into the first team this season. But he had a great stint at Wigan, didn't he? Paul Cook's Wigan, and they only won 13 of their 46 league games. So he was a shining light in an otherwise mediocre season. I think they finished 12 points clear of relegation. But he played 45 games. That's an awful lot of football for someone at that stage of his career. 44 of them starts as well, contributing to 6 goals in the process. I can't imagine that Wigan were a free scoring side last campaign. So that's probably a solid return as well. 3 tackles and interceptions. More impressively, 81% of those were successful that he went in for. 1 shot, 1.7 key passes, so a very healthy contribution going forward. I've not had a look at his expected goals and assist numbers because we don't really get that for the Championship, do we? But that would suggest maybe he was unfortunate not to have a few more. Did pick up that ankle injury, but despite that, you know, picked up where he left off. And in 1920, 18 appearances already so far, 5 goal contributions. And I mean, that's been spread across multiple competitions, hasn't it? But his Premier League stats look fine, look really solid. So 6 starts, 3.4 tackles and interceptions. That success rate's dropped a bit, which you'd anticipate with him, you know, playing in a better league, right? And Chelsea have been a little bit defensively suspect as a unit at times, haven't they? That clean sheet against Burnley at home, extremely welcome. Scored in that 4-4 draw, that memorable 4-4 draw that we covered on Total Football.
What a game.
Becoming Chelsea's youngest ever Champions League goal scorer in the process. And he's looked really good in the Champions League as well. Almost 4 tackles and interceptions, 1.8 shots, 1.8 key passes, 2.2 dribbles. Like, he's impressive, right? Because he's got that physicality, but he's also quite nimble on the ball. What have you guys thought of Reece James? In with an outside chance of being included in the Euros if his form continues in this vein?
I mean, potentially, but that right back is probably, after, you know, the forward line, our strongest position in terms of depth. I mean, Walker still hasn't gone away. Trippier's obviously having a good campaign. Trent, but I'd definitely consider Reece James for the Euros. I feel like he's as you said, he's so physically dominant. He's so quick and he's very strong. I actually think his positional sense is really good. But what I'd be most impressed with is his crossing. He's an unbelievable crosser of the ball. He can hit a really low cross, but multiple techniques, multiple ways of getting it in. There's already people arguing on Twitter about who's better, Trent or Reece James.
I mean, that's ridiculous, isn't it?
That is absolutely crazy. And just let Reece James be Reece James as well. Stop comparing people all the time. But yeah, really impressed with him. Outside chance for the Euros. And Southgate should strongly consider him.
It would be very much in line with, you know, the vision that Southgate's been putting forward. And Kyle Walker's kind of been gently worked out of the team for Trent, hasn't he? What do you think about Reece James? Does he get the Pato seal of approval?
I really like him, but I don't think there's any chance of him going to the Euros.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Wan-Bissaka's miles ahead of him, Trent's miles ahead of him, and this is not an insult to him. He's clearly like a really, really good young player. I mean, I'd take him over Trippier.
Would you?
Yeah, because I don't. Trippier's like Dean, right? Like, he's a guy who's not a great defender but has got a good delivery. Now you've got guys who have that delivery. You've got Reece James and you've got Trent Alexander-Arnold. So I kind of think, okay, the one thing that we get from you, we have covered from other angles. But it's a pity because he does look like the kind of player who you'd expect to be starting for a national team in about 2 years' time. And it looks like he'll be starting for Chelsea from now on. I think Reece James is a really, really exciting player. Because also it's interesting what you're saying about his deliveries. He's crossing from an area that we never used to see fullbacks cross from. You'd see them kind of run down the line and actually cross from kind of by the edge of the box, whereas he almost comes inside to like the corner of the box, like the half space, and then like will clip the ball to the. He can do the bigger cross as well, but that little clipped ball to the back stick,
quite low.
And Chelsea just know to crash the far post. So you get like 3 guys running in trying to get on the end of it, and that suggests to me that Lampard has looked at Reece James's delivery and said, kind of similarly to what Liverpool did with Trent Alexander-Arnold, they said, you know what, this guy's got such a strength in this sense that we're going to actually alter our attacking plan to work to his ability, which is a real seal of approval.
And you see that with KDB, don't you? That corner of the box on that flank is prime KDB territory. Riyad Mahrez runs it down the line, pulls it back for KDB to whip the ball across the box for his forwards. And we see Reece James do that. And the fact that Reece James can put that sort of cross in, that KDB's kind of, earmarked as his, is very impressive.
I think Lampard's done it quite cleverly as well, because one of the weaknesses in his team at the start of the year was probably left back in Marcus Alonso, Emerson, neither of them being totally convincing. Both had their injury problems as well. That's not really a dig at them. I just don't know whether they're necessarily going to take Chelsea to the next level. But moving Azpilicueta to the left and Reece James in has solidified his left flank and added a massive weapon on his right. So fair play to Lampard.
Yeah, and when that happens, right, they can go to a back three, because we've seen that Azpilicueta isn't, the Azpilicueta of 2 or 3 years ago who could get up and down the pitch. He was just indomitable down that flank, wasn't he? And now Reece James can sort of be that auxiliary wing back come midfielder, which is great. Talking of great delivery, Dwight Mcneil. Are we fans of Dwight Mcneil on this sofa?
I like Dwight Mcneil. I like Dwight Mcneil a lot. I feel like it's not that fashionable to talk about people at Burnley, but what he does for Burnley is pretty much unrivaled. His delivery, his crossing, his ability over set pieces is the reason. I mean, Burnley get something like over 45% of their goals from set pieces. Dwight Mcneil is often a key part of that, even if it's knockdowns that then. So his assist numbers have never been incredible. But since he actually made his debut at the last day, I think, of the 17-18 season, then played a lot from January in 18-19, helped keep Burnley up. And Burnley going through a bit of a tricky patch at the moment, but they'll definitely be safe. And I feel like Dwight Mcneil...
They'll definitely be safe.
I think they'll definitely be safe.
What makes you say they'll be definitely safe?
I think unless
there
Bournemouth...
are like 7 teams
there are
worse
quite a
than
few teams that are worse. I would have thought Norwich looked like they're definitely down. It looks like it's going that way for Bournemouth at the moment. And I still think Newcastle could really slip into it as well. And that's not just me with my Sunderland hat on as well. But yeah, I think they'll be in and around 16th down. But yeah, like Dwight Mcneil, I think if they go down, he'll definitely stay in the Premier League. I don't think he's ever going to be a top 6, top 8 player, but he's a comfortable Premier League player for me.
Yeah, I mean, he's very cultured, isn't he? I think, like you said, Burnley extremely dependent on his ability to whip in a ball. Like he's quite pressure resistant as well. He's quite good at dribbling, isn't he? Getting that first time ball out. And I think Burnley producing the fewest shots from open play, Pat. So a guy like this, invaluable in terms of creating chances from set pieces. I think all of their shots against Chelsea came from corner situations.
This is, especially in the absence of Goodmanson for a large stretch of the first half of the season. Like, he was more important. I mean, I think in the long run, like, Goodmanson is the guy they really rely on. But yeah, I think Burnley have actually been pretty damn good this season. I think that they'll really hope that they can finish as close to the top half of the table as possible. Like, their attack has really improved over the last 2 years. I think Burnley are actually quite impressive. I think they're way ahead of the bottom third of the league at least.
I suppose in a similar vein, players that their team might be going down, but they'll probably stay up. Why don't we move on to Todd Cantwell, because he is one of the top scoring players under 21, aside from Mbappe, Osimhen,
and Sancho,
and Jadon Sancho.
Yeah, so it's the top in the Premier League.
6
under
league
22.
goals. Really impressive maiden campaign from him in the Premier League. What about his game do you like?
I love Cantwell. Like, he doesn't have like outstanding physical ability. Like, he's not particularly strong. He's not particularly fast. Though you imagine he'll get a bit stronger. But he's got good technical ability. It's always difficult to know how that will translate into a better side in the Premier League. Actually, in a lot of ways, when I watch him, he kind of reminds me of Iwobi. Like they've got a real stylistic similarity, like just the way they carry the ball. Norwich have got a good attack, so as bad as Norwich are, like, people kind of want to give players at Norwich extra credit for being on a bad side, but Norwich aren't a bad attacking side. They're actually fine in attack. I'd quite like to see him go to a side, maybe not like a top side. Well, I don't know, maybe he could go to a Spurs or something, but I'd quite like to see him go to a side like a few places up the Premier League kind of ladder. Like maybe a Brighton or something where they've got a progressive coach and he's going to be allowed to come inside and combine. Because I think he's a really useful player. He can create a bit, he can score, just looks intelligent, cultured. He's actually the kind of guy, he's a childhood Arsenal fan, he's the kind of guy that Wenger would have signed years ago, because he's he's not an outstanding physical prospect, but he's really nice technically. I really like Cantwell a lot. I think he's an interesting player.
Would you take him if you're a middling Premier League side, Dougie?
Yeah, I was trying to think where he'd probably fit, and I think
It's difficult.
It is quite difficult because your Leicesters are pretty well stocked in sort of central areas. Although
He'd be quite a good one.
upgrade in wide talent Leicester probably.
And he backed you up in a couple of places. I think Leicester, he'd be quite
If Maddison moved on for an astronomical fee, he might be worth a punt at what, 20?
Potentially. Or Buendia. I think Buendia is probably more of a Madison type player in terms of his creativity. Cantwell's very good off the ball, and I think he picks up really good positions, but maybe doesn't have the same creative flair. It's going to be really interesting to see what Ancelotti does moving forward, because at the moment they're playing 4-4-2, which doesn't really suit Cantwell because he's not a natural wide player like that. He prefers to come inside. But if they're looking for a long-term replacement to someone like a Gylfi Sigurdsson, who I think's slightly fallen off a cliff this year, then that could potentially be an option. I think bottom half of the top half of the sides is probably where he's at.
Which at 21 is really promising. Really promising. He's just a different profile to a lot of other players. It's hard to think of comparisons for him because there aren't many guys who play this way.
Yeah, he certainly feels a little bit more La Liga in style, doesn't it? Let's stick with middling Premier League clubs. West Ham, Declan Rice, still only 21. 87 appearances since his debut. He's played every single minute this campaign, and his defensive numbers have actually gone up. Which is pretty impressive because last season he was seemingly doing it all for West Ham in midfield, a little bit of everything, not necessarily excelling in one metric. This season, he's gone up a notch, which would suggest he's maybe ready for a bigger stage. What do we think?
They're also facing more traffic. He's got more to do this season.
That might drop now Moyes is in charge, right?
Maybe, but I mean, he's still, if he's got Noble next to him, I think he'll still be putting up those numbers. But it's good. He's combining big defensive output with passing volume. He gets on the ball quite a lot. He passes forward a reasonable amount. He's not particularly progressive with his passing. That'll improve a bit, but it doesn't look like he's ever going to be like a superstar passer, but that's fine. Declan Rice is just a good, smart Premier League midfielder. There are worse things to be at 21. Yeah. He'll probably play for England semi-regularly for the next 5 to 10 years.
Easier to place him than Cantwell in another side?
I think so. I think there's talk of Man United potentially considering him in the summer, which if they're looking for a defensive midfielder for the next 10 years, I don't necessarily think it's the worst option.
Prefer him to Longstaff. Jesus.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't even know
but I think he'll be very, very expensive, which is the only thing because of all the hype around him. So maybe it's better just letting that cool off slightly, or letting his true price come out, because I think he's probably £50 million max, whereas at the moment people are talking about 70, and even people talking about 90, which is bonkers.
Because you can head to the continent and get someone that puts up decent defensive numbers and passing volume for 20 to 30.
United are supposedly looking at Samara as well from Lille, who's potentially Declan Rice and a bit more in terms of his dribbling and passing at the moment.
We talk about Sangare at Toulouse an awful lot as well, don't we? I mean, he's not necessarily as good a passer, but his defensive numbers are certainly there. I think Rice is fourth for tackles. He's fourth for tackles, fourth for interceptions, which also just shows how under pressure West Ham have been this year. Surprisingly so. Sorry, Pat.
No. I was just going to say, I think Sangare is a much better passer than Rice. Certainly more creative and has a better range, I think. Plus, he can dribble. That's the thing. What you'd like to see is consistency in some dribble numbers, because they've gone up this season. And if you can continue to do that, then you've got somebody who's got something that does provide that extra bit of value. If they have the ability to beat the press on the dribble, then suddenly you're talking about a guy who's actually worth a lot more, rather than a guy who's just going to sit there and kind of pass before he gets tackled. That player is worth much less to me.
Are Toulouse still bottoming out in League One?
Yeah.
Because I suppose he's kind of in a similar situation to Declan Rice, if not, more so. His stats probably aren't a true reflection of his game; they're more a reflection of where his team are at. It'd be interesting to see what sort of player Declan Rice evolves into. So now, if we've headed to the continent already, we might as well stay there. Is there any young players that have really tickled your pickle, Dougie, on Eurofootball Daily?
One young player that's probably worth talking about just because of this week is Jedson Fernandez, who's just joined Spurs. And I think that's...
So it's Jedson, not Gedson?
In this podcast I was listening to yesterday with a Portuguese expert,
Jedson.
They were saying Jedson.
Lesson
And
learned.
duly noted, but I didn't know either. But yeah, they were saying, how highly rated he was in the Benfica academy. He was just behind João Felix in terms of the top pedigree. But 18 months ago, his sort of stock fell when George Jesus, I'm now messing up my pronunciation, but anyway, their manager left. New manager came in, didn't really rate him as much, fell down the pecking order. He's only played just over 200 league minutes this year. So for Spurs to put an 18-month loan on him with quite a big option to buy, I think is a massive risk. But people are kind of mistaking what he is. I think I've seen a lot of people on Twitter talk about him as a defensive midfielder. Apparently he's much more box to box. Whereas if I was Spurs, what I would have done is invested in a really good defensive midfielder, because I don't think Dyer or Sissoko is going to be that going forward, and Winks doesn't look like a Mourinho player, even though he is a very good passer. To play alongside Ndombele going forward, that's what I would have done. But otherwise, on the continent, really good, impressive youngsters. In the limited amount I've seen Bastoni, the Inter Milan centre-back, I've been really impressed with him. He's often came in for Godin on the for Skriniar on the left-hand side of the defence. He's a really good left-footed centre-back, very confident with the ball at his feet. But I haven't seen a hell of a lot of him, so I'm looking forward to watching a bit more of him in 2020. But yeah, I can't really think. Lights out teenagers. Pat, have you got anyone coming to mind?
Well, we've talked about Kulusevski. Obviously, there are the obvious guys like Haaland and Sancho, but they're not really prospects anymore in a way. Sandro Tonali's having a good season for Brescia, like very low down in Serie A, but really good creative numbers. Defensive work could go up a little bit, but I imagine he'll get a move if they get relegated.
Already seen him linked with Inter Milan.
Yeah, actually, Alphonso Davies playing left back has been really interesting. I think he's 1.3 key passes a game. I think he's one of the top dribblers in Europe with over 3 dribbles a match. But defensively, he's been great. Defensively, I think it's like 3.2 tackles per 90. I think overall he's got close to 5 tackles and interceptions per game, and he's succeeding with over 75% of his tackles. So maybe he won't be a winger for them, but it looks like if he's not, he could easily be an elite left back. Because to put up those defensive numbers on a side which has as much of the ball as Bayern Munich is rare. So yeah, in a way, their injury crisis has produced a bit of a discovery there.
I was quite surprised to see Todibo head to Schalke on loan from Barcelona. He was awesome against Inter Milan in the Champions League. I think probably Barcelona's man of the match, as they edged them 2-1, right? If memory serves me correctly. I think he put up a monstrous amount of tackles and interceptions that game as well on the right-hand side of a 3-man defence. Pretty weird to see Valverde sort of match Conte's 3-4-3 in that game. Something that Setien, could do or might have done had Todibo not moved, because it doesn't feel like he has that much flexibility in his defence now. Umtiti's becoming increasingly injury prone. Of course, still got Piqué, Longley, but Nelson Semedo, Jordi Alba, not really makeshift centre-backs if he wants to try that, which he did on occasion at Betis. And I really like Todibo, and I think Schalke have an option to buy for around 30 or 25 million euros plus 5 million pounds worth of add-ons, or million euros even. And then Barcelona have a 50 million euro buyback clause. So it feels like they're probably teeing themselves up, if he continues in the same vein, he is to buy a youngster back for an astronomical fee. But we'll see how that goes. The Bundesliga, a really good proving ground for young defenders, isn't it? No doubt we'll cover more youngsters on Euro Football Daily on the continent, so head over there if you're interested. Let us know whoever's caught your eye, in the comments below. Moving on to quickfire questions. Before we move on to our next section, then, if you're not subscribed to the channel, then hit that subscribe button as shown on screen right now. Turn notifications on to never miss an episode of Sunday Vibes. Let's crack on. Richie1889 kicking us off then with the most underrated team in every top 5 league. Not necessarily a quickfire question, really pushing your luck here, Richie. Dougie, let's start in the Premier League.
I'd probably go. The team that have just caught me out completely this year is Sheffield United. Got to admit, probably didn't watch enough of them in the Championship last year. Sort of looked at the composition of their squad in terms of being very British heavy, their pass accuracy, their possession last year in the Championship, and just thought they were going to get steamrolled. Thought they'd finish 20th. I look like a right knob. They've been awesome. I think they're my underrated team in the Premier League. Then from other leagues, I think obviously Lazio have really snuck into contention in Serie A. Don't think many people thought that they'd be third at this stage. They've also got a game in hand, so I think they could go above Inter if they win that, although I might be wrong on that. But yeah, they're definitely in the title mix.
And they have the outstanding creator in the league in Luis Alberto and the outstanding scorer in Ciro Immobile.
I mean, first player to 20 goals. And Luis Alberto has just been unreal this year. Kind of surprising because, everyone that saw him at Liverpool, he looked okay, but, worth selling. And I don't think anyone disagreed with the decision. And their balance in midfield's really good with Lucas Leiva still, doing fantastic defensive work. Parolo as well. Milinkovic-Savic further forward, who's got back to his best of the year before last, I would say, despite him winning, I think it was Serie A Midfielder of the Year last year. So I think Lazio are definitely, one of the most underrated teams in Europe and could potentially cause a bit of a shock. So yeah, they'd be my other teams. Pat, have you got anyone from Ligue 1 or La Liga?
From Ligue 1, I guess it's hard to say. I mean, Marseille are in second, but certainly in this country, Andre Villas-Boas has always been seen as a little bit of a joke, even though he's generally speaking constructed totally sound sides that are actually good defensively, except against the very, very best teams. And Marseille have been pretty good.
His spell at Spurs was pretty good.
Yeah, and they're 8 points off PSG, which is not that much really when you consider the firepower at PSG's disposal, and
real to balance the books as well.
Real financial worries at Marseille. I think they'll probably lose a bunch of guys this summer, but they've been good.
In the Premier League, that Tovan as well.
In the Premier League, I don't think Sheffield United are underrated now. I think they're getting plenty of credit for what they've done. We underrated them before the season started.
Yeah, I think that's what I meant. Yeah.
But I think that actually, based on how they've been this season, I think Man United are better than people think they are. They're a very good defensive side, and they're okay in attack. They're getting better. I think Brighton are pretty good, and when you watch them, they're great to watch. They're really fun. And Burnley have been good as well. As for other stuff, it's really hard. In Serie A, I just think that generally speaking, people assume everybody in Serie A is rubbish except Juve, and this is the first time in a while people have been maybe other sides are good, and even then they really only mean Inter. But I agree, Lazio have been good, and Roma as well. Roma had a sloppy start to the season. They're still reliant on Kolarov and Dzeko, but at the same time, Kolarov and Dzeko have been great. So I think, fair enough. But often these teams, you get some bad runs and they slip down the league, and then everyone says they're crap. So Eintracht Frankfurt are in the bottom half of the Bundesliga table. Eintracht are really, really interesting, and they lost elite talent last year, and once again, they're absolutely great.
Yeah, Kostic is having a great season for them, isn't it?
They've got so much quality. Paciencia has been good as well. And again, I just think that the problem is that people, basically Premier League fans or English-speaking football fans, really only rate the big clubs in Spain, who I don't think are that good at the moment, and big clubs in the Premier League, and they don't care about anybody else. And as a result, you end up with stuff like people saying Spurs are going to walk all over RB Leipzig. Well, I think people are maybe changing their minds about that now.
Yeah, I would agree, definitely on the Marseille front. I really want to do some sort of exploring as to how Villas-Boas has turned that ship around, because in pre-season they're of course losing to the likes of Rangers very convincingly, Accrington Stanley.
I was about to say, was it Trent then? No, it was Accrington, was it?
And now when I sort of read some of the reports from French media outlets, it's managers raving about his tactical approach. Where did Jeffrey René Adelaide get sold from? Sorry,
Angers.
Angers. So the manager for Angers 3-4 weeks ago when they played was like, I've never seen a team come here and give us possession because they know that that's not our game and we can't really do much with it. That's exactly what Marseille did, and he was just like, Villas-Boas, it deserves all the plaudits he's getting right now. And you see sort of your peers, under Villas-Boas' peers give him credit. He's putting in a good shift. Rennes are faring really well at the moment, aren't they? Third, sort of perpetual yo-yo team in themselves, but have some, really good talent in that squad. And of course, sold
Ismail
Assar to Watford. Thank you very much for plugging these European holes for me at the moment, though. The Bundesliga, who else is that? I mean, we've covered Gladbach plenty of times.
Yeah, Leverkusen are good as well. Leverkusen are really good.
Playing some good stuff under Peter Bosch. Yeah,
well, Kai Havertz is having a bit of a down year, and yet is linked with a €150 million move to Liverpool, which is very overpriced, but a good player.
Torino and Verona faring very well in Serie A at the moment as well. Sort of
Cagliari started very well as well
in the top half, and Belotti's looking, back to his best in the same vein as Milinkovic-Savic. You know, he had that great season 2 or 3 years ago, didn't he? He's looked pretty prolific at the start of this season. So yeah, maybe keep your eyes on some guys like that. Okay. Will 090702. Who's better in their prime, Robin or Ribéry? If we do this quickly, we can maybe sneak another one in there.
I feel like I had much more exposure to Robin, so I think I'm going to say Robin because I watched much more of him at international level, obviously, and he just seemed to be the guy that would shine in the latter stages of European competition for Bayern Munich in particular. Obviously played in England as well, played for Real Madrid, so I feel like I've had much more exposure to Robin, so I'm going to say Robin, but I don't really have any good reason.
Pat?
It depends what you mean by prime. Like, if it's just like the best year, Ribéry might have had the best year of either of them, but I'd probably say Robin. I think Robin was better for longer.
Okay, I agree. I think Robin as well. Right, let's pick one last question here. Kobe Wooters, this is borderline a personal question as well. What are your favourite types of goals? He's put in brackets, long shots, free kicks, tiki-taka, solo goal.
I said this on Sunday, I think it was Sunday Vibes the other day, that I don't like halfway line goals. I think they're really overrated.
Yeah, I agree.
But I like 30-yarders, 35.
What do you mean? When you see Xabi Alonso put that
I don't
backspin
really
on it
think it's
from
that-
his own half, you
Yeah.
think it's
I don't think it's-
overrated?
I
It
think
looks
it's
like a
really
Sunday
overrated.
league goal.
Two of you fools.
It looks like a Sunday league
I just
goal.
feel like a lot of footballers should be able to do that. I know it's not. I know it's a long way to kick it, but it is quite a big goal. And if the goalkeeper's not in it, which is generally what happens, then
Agreed.
it's quite
You
easy
need
to
put
score
more
it.
respect on Charlie Adam, on John Joe Shelby.
I mean, they're great.
This is where they shine.
They're
Yeah,
great.
that is the
they're
thing,
great to
isn't it? The
watch,
list
but
of
like-
players who've done it like shows you
Yeah.
that it's not that special.
And you see goalkeeper goals occasionally. I'm never that overwhelmed when they score from 90 metres with a wind-assisted goal.
Yeah.
I prefer 35 yards, ping top corner, or a bit of a tiki-taka as well, like that Wilshere goal versus Norwich. Was that against Norwich?
Yes,
Yeah,
it was.
and you have Rosicki's against, or who was it for Arsenal?
Was that not against Sunderland?
He started and finished it.
Possibly against Sunderland.
Watch
when he
Premier League
goes
years
through,
recently.
yeah, when he goes through and like clips over. I thought that was against Sunderland.
It could be. It could be. What about you, mate?
Yeah, I prefer a team goal or something. But also, I really enjoy a half volley. Like when someone catches it perfectly just as it hits the ground,
rises.
and it just rises. There's a Jack Wilshere one against West Brom from the last day of the season a couple of years ago. It was unreal. And I remember seeing, I think it was like Cameron Jerome or someone once scored one from like 35 yards in the Premier. It was unreal. Like if you hit it right just as it hits the ground, almost nothing is more satisfying. Also, if it goes in off the underside of the bar, instantly the best goal ever.
Yeah.
Always good.
Yeah.
I feel like was Jagielka's against Liverpool. I always remember that as an amazing
God,
goal. Was that a
absolute
half volley or
thunder
did he just?
bastard.
That was awesome.
Yeah,
I
that
love
was
it when
a
they
sick goal.
swerve out to in.
Or the
Those
Ramsey,
goals are just great.
Ramsey one against Galatasaray, which is unreal. Also, I like a goal that's embarrassing for someone. So I enjoyed the Ziyech free kick going in off Kepa's stupid face. That was really, that was really
You loved
enjoyable.
that on the stream. You were delighted.
It was so good.
I love it when they're hit like obscenely straight. You know, when the logo
When it doesn't move.
The logo of the ball doesn't move, and it's just an absolute arrow. Or when someone has to open up their body. Like Gabriel Jesus does it all the time. Sometimes it just curls, straight into the goalkeeper's grasp, but opens up their body to steer it, where it goes from outside and in.
I think overhead kicks are a bit overrated.
Lovely joblet. Yeah,
Yeah,
but I
they're
appreciate,
like really
they're so
impressive.
I
rare.
appreciate the effort every single
They're
time.
really impressive, but I'm just like, I don't want to really watch overhead kicks. I have no interest.
I think one of the most overrated type of goals is the flick behind. You know, the flicked heel ones. Like, I don't think it's that special.
Yeah, because that's just like the sensible thing to do in that situation, right?
And
So you
everyone
don't
like,
fall
always
over.
used to. I was just like, this is a bit much.
Danny Welbeck used to do it like 5 times a season. That was the one thing Danny Welbeck was.
But he'd
incredible
always do
at.
it by accident.
No, he was great.
It'd be
It
like
was
his
his, it was his
follow-through.
only thing.
I kept my lips sealed at the time, but Ali Reza Jahanbash's goal, I don't even think he means to put it in that corner. I mean, it was a fantastic finish, but people talking about it as goal of the season, not having it.
I think Son's.
But it was his second goal. He was almost in tears again. It was great to see. He's been through a tough 18 months, hasn't he?
has, yeah.
So probably deserves that rub of the green. All right, let's move on to personal questions. Apparently, I had a lot of personal questions this week, so I appreciate the effort. But looking at them, try harder. No. All right, let's get into it. La Best 20. Who's your favourite film baddie? Actually, quite like this one. Go on, mate.
Mine would be Dr. Evil, just for the comedy value. I used to love the Austin Powers films, and
You like your villain's camp, do you? And
I
over the
do.
top?
I do.
Okay.
Other than that, I can't really.
Scar from The Lion King.
Scar.
Bangs.
Yeah.
Absolutely bad.
I was also angry with him though because he betrayed his family. Like,
Yes, he's a baddie, Doogie.
I know, but
You're correctly irritated by his wrongdoing.
I don't know. He was so. I just thought he was such a.
Wow.
No, I mean, I agree.
Didn't think I'd hear that, or a phrase like that. What other Disney characters do you think are So let us know in the comments below. Who is Johnny English's foe in the first one? Played by...
Who remembers Johnny
Yeah,
English?
he's
He's like the... Oh. No, I thought you meant the guy who's also in the Secret Service.
Oh, come on. He's... What is... It's John Malkovich plays him.
Yeah, something like Despard or something.
Oh, I can't remember.
And his plan is to put Britain in the prison.
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but in terms of like...
He's quite funny.
The comical baddies, he's definitely up there. Right, who are you going for?
Hans Gruber.
Hans Gruber, pretty good answer.
Yeah.
Pretty darn good answer.
Yeah.
Why? What do you like about Hans Gruber?
Or just the Nazis as
Right.
baddies in every film.
Okay.
Like in Indiana Jones, where he's just like if you're gonna have a guy who just like goes around murdering a bunch of people, like then he should at least be Nazis.
Ooh.
That's what I found weird with Wonder Woman, right? Wonder Woman, which is actually terrible. You know, when she's like, she goes into a battlefield and she's just like murdering everyone, and they're like, amazing, what a hero. And you're like, this is the First World War. Nobody wants to be here. They're not Nazis. Like, I didn't understand what she was up to. But anyway.
Well, Wonder Woman
She was
2's
the real
coming out,
bad.
so-
She was the real villain.
Wonder Woman was your favourite baddie, nice.
She's baddie in a different way.
In Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards, what is the Austrian's name?
seen
Why am
that.
I forgetting
Oh,
everyone's
yeah,
name today? He is.
I haven't seen that, sorry.
He's the dentist in Django.
Yeah. I know the actor. It's Christoph Waltz, but I
Christoph
can't remember
Waltz.
the name of the part.
He's a great actor.
He is
Yeah.
mesmerising in
got
that
such
film.
a cool accent
So
as
I'm
well.
going to go for that. Also, you know, after mugging off the personal questions, there's some obscene ones down here that I do rate.
Obscene? What are we getting?
C. Jali Gal, rate your driving skills, and if you don't drive, why?
That's not obscene at all. You raise my expectations.
What do you mean? In the context of this being a football show, it's obscene to ask that.
Yeah.
All right.
Driving skills, I'm like a 6 probably.
Out of?
Out of 10.
Just out of like 30.
Like, I don't think I'm great. It took me 3 times to pass, which was always quite frustrating because my brother passed first time without any minors, and he was in the local paper.
What?
Yeah. So there's not much that happens.
Well, they were like, young boy passes
so
driving
it's in the
test.
Perthshire advertisement. It was called,
Unbelievable.
it was Faultless Fergus, and it was so annoying for me and my sister.
What the?
That shows the like news cycle in Central Scotland. It's not
Oh my
going on.
God.
That is absolutely outstanding.
Because he was he was his
This is like the village in Hot Fuzz.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh my God, what a story.
Because Graham, the
Trusty
instructor,
jugglers.
had 3 people pass without a minors in a month, and so they included Fergus, but it was Faultless Fergus. And it was
no minors.
no minors.
What's that teacher doing? What's his motivational technique?
You'll think I'm making this up now, but he was actually quite an interesting character. He had half a tongue. Because he'd had tongue cancer.
Do go
so
on.
to like communicate was really quite difficult. So he'd sort of like when you were like left
Don't
or right.
do an impression.
Okay, I won't. But it was very difficult to get to grips with what he was saying. But he was very thorough. So you'd have quite a few lessons with him because he knew that he wasn't that good at communicating. So I think he just was basically a money.
Maybe he
spinner.
does. Maybe he demonstrates more and stuff as well.
Yeah.
Fucking Jedi.
I know, Graham. But yeah, we didn't get along so well. I said it passed on my 3rd time. But yeah, not Faultless Fergus.
Unlucky.
Yeah. You're a good driver?
What about your driving
I don't
skills?
drive.
Yeah.
I don't drive.
Why?
If not, why?
Yeah.
Because when I was growing up, I was just like, well, if I go and do my driving test now, I'm still not going to have a car. Like, I'm not going to buy a car now because I don't have the money to do that. So I was kind of like, why would I bother? I'll spend the money on getting drunk with my friends, which I did. And then at uni, we're forbidden to have cars. And
Forbidden?
Now, yeah, you can't have a car.
That's quite strong.
And there's just not space. Like the town's a nightmare. And then I've been in London ever since. So I probably will learn. I probably will learn this year. I'd rather not learn in London, but there we are.
Because if you and Emma ever want to leave London, then you probably need it.
It depends. I think we'd always be in a big city though.
City folk.
Yeah, but I'll probably learn.
Unlike
just
you
so,
and your Perthshire fucking Times or whatever it's called.
Perthshire advertising.
Yeah, where it's just you like dodging sheep.
Yeah. Yeah,
Pretty
there's
amazing.
not much news up
Is
there.
it a sore spot still? It feels like there's a slight wistfulness.
I was
when
quite
you-
jealous at the time.
Is it framed in the house? And
remember-
every time you walk past it, you just like,
Oh,
I
yes.
don't think we
So,
did,
yeah.
no. But I remember getting so frustrated failing my driving test. It was like,
Yeah.
I cried.
I can
Like,
understand.
I found it so annoying. Because I
mean,
knew that I could do it, but
the
I just kept on
frustration,
failing
sure,
for such
but-
annoying things. But yeah, I was
And you
like
can't-
in tears.
And it's not like you can do it. You can try again in an hour. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, now you've got to wait
No,
a
you
few
got
weeks.
yeah, because Graham would always be like, right, you need 3 more lessons.
Yeah, my sister did like 4.
Money, money, money,
Yeah,
money.
exactly.
So I passed third time as well.
Yeah.
And it is massively frustrating. I mean, the first 2 times failed for radically different things as well. Like one of them, obscene. So you know, if you go past a school during school hours,
Oh, God.
yeah. Yeah, stay with me. Just keep it clean.
Try not to get
And the lights are flashing. It means you can only go 20 miles an hour.
Okay.
And
That is
I
not
was
commonly known.
adhering to the road of the road
30.
speed of 30, and they failed me for
Were
that.
there kids crossing and stuff?
You
You didn't see them as they
We
zipped past.
hosed their blood off your car.
Yeah, I
afterwards.
hope not. The fact I can't remember is pretty worrying. And then, well, you just told at the end of your test. Your test is an absolute blur, isn't it? Like it's just pure adrenaline.
That's crazy that that's a major.
Yeah, and then
the
the
way.
second one.
It's quite important that is a major.
Second-
though.
Yeah, but going from okay.
I was so concerned about my speed after the first one. The second one, I was failed, or at least partly failed, for going too slow down a dual carriageway.
That is dangerous as well.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
like going like 47, and he was like, the minimum you can do is like 52, 53.
Some of their rules are ridiculous.
Yeah, absolute fucking
I mean, that's quite important.
mercenaries.
Well, I remember-
it's like a racket.
Everyone who lives in London though and doesn't drive now though, even if you were a good driver before, you must be shit because everybody says right, you pass your test and then you actually kind of learn to drive. But like, if you're living in London, like you probably haven't driven for absolutely ages, and then everybody must move out to the sticks as they get older, and just it must be absolute carnage.
Well, the
in
opposites
suburbs.
happen with my girlfriend. So obviously, she moved down to London, and it's
Yeah.
just become like she's a really good driver now.
But she works with cars.
Yeah, she does. But now she is like giving fully grown men the sign. And she's
I
a
like
totally different beast when she's driving now. Like London has turned her into just an awful person when she's behind the wheel.
I think it does that to everyone.
My driving instructor was also a pretty weird bloke. We called him Crazy John.
Oh,
And
yeah.
on your second lesson, he took you down a dual carriageway and made you do like between like 70 and
Donuts.
80 miles an hour. And he'd just be screaming at you, and you were like, overtake, overtake. And, it's like, and you'd wake up like
Bit of a boy racer.
PTSD the next day.
The real
and,
villain.
And he'd be like, I once drove to Coventry in 8 minutes. Down the,
Cool,
M,
John.
down the M67, you should be like, brilliant.
It's like an Alan Partridge thing
Yeah.
to say.
And now he drives lorries because cars just aren't challenging enough.
The most annoying rule that you can pick up minus for is driving too close to parked cars. I always used to get them for that. I was like, I didn't hit anyone. Like, how close was I?
Yeah.
Annoying.
Yeah, that's objective.
Prove it. Prove it, exactly.
Yeah.
There were no scratches.
What manoeuvres did you get on the test that you passed?
Oh, God, you're testing me now. I think
Because
it was a 3-point
reverse
turn.
round corner was the stinking one, right?
I didn't mind that. 3-point turn I found much harder.
Flip
What?
over a helicopter.
Yeah.
Classic in Scotland.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, this is all you've got
Jumper
to look forward to,
ravine.
Pat. What's the third one? It's reversing around a corner.
Parallel park.
Parallel park, that's difficult as well. I haven't done that since
That
I
is
did night
difficult.
test.
I did that with my girlfriend's Mini recently and scratched her alloys, and she said like, there's like a point system at work, and I now can't drive a car until she gets a new car, and the point system is reset because if you go past it, you have to pay for the alloy of the scratches to be like ironed out. So.
Oh.
She lets me drive it, then I do the demasculated thing of letting her park it, like get out, go around, and she's just, I'll park. I'm like, okay. And that's it. That's all for today's show. Thank you very much for sending your questions in. What else have we got going across, Football Daily, Euro Football Daily, that the fine people at home can watch?
Yes, we'll go check out, Hamill mentioned it earlier, go check out Friday's Continental Club. I think we're talking about the Barcelona situation, Setien coming in, Valverde out, etc. So go check that out.
Check out the podcast if you're not subscribed to it, the Extra Time podcast, available on Spotify and iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. We've done transfer specials the last 2 weeks. So there's one out on some big clubs from around Europe this week, and the one before that is 9 of the Premier League's 20 sides. So if you enjoy podcasts, Extra Time.
All very bloody entertaining. Bye.